Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the votes that took place in the House of Representatives on the $95 billion spending bill, a bill that was offered during the same week that the International Monetary Fund warned the United States that it couldn't continue to, you know, pile on debt, creating spending more money that it's taking in by just continuing to print money. And we went through the vote in the House, which for Israel for $17 billion was 366 to 58. 58 is an amazing number of people, I guess, you could get to vote against Israel in the United States Congress. All of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus voted to fund the genocidal war in Gaza, except for Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Andre Carson, Maxwell Frost, Al Green, Jonathan Jackson, Hank Johnson, Barbara Lee, Summer Lee, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Presley, Maxine Waters, Bonnie Watson Coleman, and Benny Thompson. So all of them voted against the U.S. government sending another $17 billion of hard-earned U.S. taxpayer money to continue to support the U.S. complicity in the genocidal war that's killing children. We estimate perhaps up to 20,000 children. This is not a war between armies. When you're killing that many children, the ratio of women, children, and innocent people killed to combatants is unprecedented in world history as far as recorded history is concerned. So we gave these the people that we called out, Cori Bush, etc., Ilhan Omar, and those members of the Congressional Black Caucus who voted against sending the money to the Zionist state, along with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib. Then the House voted 311 to 112 to provide $60.84 billion for the war in Ukraine. Okay, now most of this money will come back to the United States military-industrial complex. The 112 votes were all Republicans, meaning that every member of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives voted to send another $60.8 billion to Ukraine. This is on top of the 113 and some change they've already sent. The total amount of U.S. taxpayers' money that they have now spent on the war in Ukraine is a whopping $174 billion. And all of these so-called progressives, the progressives that you see here on the screen, Ocasio-Cortez, Presley, Omar, Tlaib, and Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, all of them, along with Maxine Waters and Barbara Lee and Summer Lee, Bonnie Watson Coleman, Hank Johnson, all of these guys voted for the war in Ukraine. And so it reminded me about some of the things that Dr. King said in his speeches, his two speeches that took place in March of 1967 against the war in Vietnam. And the first thing he said, I was increasingly compelled to see the war as an enemy of the poor and attack it as such. That was one statement he made. Another statement he made when he was talking about it, he said, some of us have already begun. He's speaking here in Riverside Church, and he's talking about the war in Vietnam. He says, some of us have already begun to break the silence of the night, have found the calling to speak is often a vocation of agony, but we must speak. We must speak with all humility, all of the humility that is appropriate in our limited vision, but we must speak, and we must rejoice as well, for surely this is the first time in our nation's history that a significant number of religious leaders have chosen to move beyond the prophesying of smooth patriotism to the high grounds of firm dissent based on the mandates of conscience and the reading of history. The mandates of conscience and the reading of history. What these two contradictory votes indicate that there are no members of the U.S. Congress, and we could also apply this to the U.S. Senate, who are opposed to war based on the mandates of conscience and the reading of history. Here you have these people representing overwhelmingly African American communities, and in the case of Rashida Tlaib, the Palestinian and Arab community in Michigan. And they're voting to send an additional $17 billion, voting against sending $17 billion to Ukraine, to Israel, but voting to send an additional 60.8, almost $61 billion. They are literally taking money out of the pockets of the people they represent. Money that I'm sure is sorely needed in every district they represent. Sorely needed in every district they represent, because I'm sure in their districts you have, massive amounts of homelessness, people with all kinds of mental health issues, crime that needs, programs like the Mills Place manhood training programs to attack the problem at the grassroots, prevention programs. I'm sure that money could be used in their districts, but there's no moral conscience in this group to say we can't support this. Why would they support it? I mean, after standing up against the Zionist state, why would they support this? And what it suggests, I mean, to me, it's an absolute contradiction of what the psychologists and psychiatrists call dissociative identity disorder, holding two contradictory views that has you moving in different directions. And since we pointed this out after that vote on April the 20th, we've noticed that no one is addressing this issue. No one is calling these people out. I know they might say, well, they are progressives on other issues, and we need them to stand up against the Zionist state and to stand up for other things. But you are not standing up for the people you represent when you vote to essentially send $174 billion down the drain, because it doesn't matter how much money they pour into Ukraine. It's really, at this point, for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, it's not even about Ukraine winning. It's about making sure the war continues past the election in November, since Biden has staked his presidency on winning the war in Ukraine, which is not going to happen, and the removal of Vladimir Putin from the presidency of Russia, which is not going to happen. Okay, so he needed something to save face, and all of these people right here that you're looking at, all of them stood up to support Joe Biden, genocide Biden, support his efforts to continue to save face at the expense of the very people they represent. In other words, there were no mandates of conscience among any of them. This included Maxine Waters, Barbara Lee, the only person who voted against the war in Iraq, Summer Lee, who has she's the sister right next to Bowman, between Bowman and Bush. Summer Lee of Pennsylvania just won her reelection. The Zionists had pumped a lot of money. AIPAC had pumped a lot of money into her opponent, and she still won, I think, by 21 or 22%. Cori Bush is running against a Zionist opponent in the Missouri primary, I think, in August, and she's trailing by about 20 points. But where is your conscience? Where is your moral conscience? That has you operating with what essentially a split personality when it comes to doing what's right. How do you rationalize this? How do you
rationalize it with the paycheck?
Rationalize it with a paycheck. Okay, so paycheck from the military industrial complex. But I just wanted to bring this once again back to the attention of our audience, and hopefully to the attention of others, because no one is addressing this contradiction. And regardless of whatever else they have done or whatever else they might do, they have to be called out on this particular point of supporting the war in Ukraine, continuing to pour money down the drain. Here you have people in the United States that have to work to age 66 and a half before they can start drawing Social Security, and people in Ukraine can start drawing Social Security at the age of 60, and in some positions they can start drawing it as early as age 55. And we are paying, American taxpayers are paying the Social Security checks for people in Ukraine, and it's coming out of the money that these Congress people are voting for. So, we just wanted to point that out, and hopefully, it will get, the people's attention that we simply cannot continue to operate, with people that, can't bring themselves to simply, as Dr. King said, conscious ask the question, is it right? And there was nothing right about that particular vote on the part of these members of the squad and these other so-called progressives in the U.S. Congress.
Yeah, it seems as though there's not too many people that are going to challenge the American machine when it comes to war. And I think that the military industrial complex is so powerful and lucrative for these politicians that they join in on the agenda. And these people are smart people. Um, Many of them in various degrees, and they should have a thorough understanding, geopolitical understanding of the situation, but they took an oath to the United States government. And when you're talking about threats to national security, according to the Pentagon, the military industrial complex, the CIA, etc., they're going to follow those orders when they're given. So um, it's expected, in my opinion, it's expected for them to do what they did. A lot of their talking points in public are no more than talking points to speak to their political audience and to get elected, or in some cases, push through things that they can or do believe in that do not go against the war agenda. But I think the war agenda in this country supersedes everything for these politicians. And even the Republicans and progressives and so called, who say, we don't need to be sending money to Ukraine, and some of them who do vote against it, they are still in support of it, in my opinion.
You know what these people are doing in voting to continue the war in Ukraine is, in fact, in my opinion, putting the whole world at a closer risk to nuclear war. Because as part of this latest package of weapons that they're sending to Ukraine, which includes the missile, the ATACMS, which have a range of 300 kilometers, which can be fired, into Russia itself. And the United States is providing Ukraine with weapons that can be used to kill Russian people. Often they simply strike, cities or whatever, like in the Donbass, for example, during during the 8 years of war between 2014 and 2022, when there were 8 years of war after Russia signed the Minsk one and Minsk two accords that were supposed to bring peace to Ukraine, and the United States was backstabbing Vladimir Putin the whole time. The United States and NATO, particularly the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, and France, were backstabbing him by uh, training the Ukrainian military to go to war in the Donbass area, because the Donbass area is the industrial hub of Ukraine. It's a Russian-speaking area, and the people in that area actually identify more as Russian than as a Ukrainian. And so with this new tranche of weapons that are being sent over there, the continuation of this war, and the same goes for the war, in Western Asia. You're simply pushing the world closer to a nuclear catastrophe. I mean, if nothing else, you would think maybe something like that would say, I can't support this, but no, that's not the case. I mean, you willing to roll the dice with an old fool in the White House like Joe Biden and all of his cronies, Harris, Blinken, Austin, etc. You rolling the dice that nothing will happen when it's just so easily. I mean, what what if a bomb lands on the Kremlin, you know, and wipes out a number of the leadership of the Russian Federation? What happens then? What happens then? So
Well,
this is
I think what
they're
happens
playing with fire with no moral conscience.
I think what happens with these individuals is that they go into a room with people that can give them as much classified information as they can, and they explain to them, this is the landscape, this is what our resources look like, this is what our resources will look like if we don't take over this territory or this country or exploit this country via war in the next 5 to 10 years. This is where it will be depleted. This is what your financial situation will look like. This is what the financial situation of America will look like. And they do what they've been doing for the past decades and centuries, is they go and they have to steal to keep the machine afloat.
Hmm.
So the way these politicians see it is, it's a potential for nuclear warfare, like you said, but in their eyes, if they don't get this done, then the resources that America has will no longer exist. This is why they always say a threat to national security and our way of life.
Hmm.
They always add that part in there because
Mhm.
if they don't exploit and go and recover the booty, then this thing will crumble like a house of cards.
Hmm.
You're talking about a country that's over $34 trillion in debt and is only hanging on to the world using the dollar to purchase oil as its main uh, power mechanism to
Mhm.
keep other countries in check.
Right. Right. Well, they're talking about hanging on to a way of life. Once those nuclear weapons can start firing, they'll find out what kind of way they find out a way of life is a way of death. And I mean, this to me, this is the risk. To me, this is the risk they're taking. I mean, in addition to just taking money out of the pockets of the people who voted them into office, instead of having that money to be able to divide up amongst them and do something for the people they represent, they decide to do something to benefit essentially the military industrial complex, but
It's a
at
lot
the
of the
risk.
political a lot of their political thoughts and ideologies are blinded by Israel. Because you see, the Israeli mentality is one of, or the Zionist mentality is one of, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I don't care about the consequences. That's how they operate. They push forward with an agenda. Look at the situation in Gaza right now. They push forward with an agenda, and they could care less what or how the United States can respond to them. You're talking about people that bombed USS Liberty, and you had the person who was carrying out the order saying, "Hey, I see a U.S. flag. We shouldn't strike." And the general says, "I don't care. Follow your orders." That's their mentality.
Yeah, particularly when there's no consequences.
No consequences. So they're willing to take the risk to see what nuclear war. If there's anybody who's willing to burn the world to ashes, it is Zionism.
No question about that. The Samson option. And it's really ironic that the legend we were talking about a legend, not actual history, but the legend of Samson is that he took down a temple of the Philistines in Gaza, killing himself and his enemies. So it's a real tragedy, brother. That this is what supposedly represents progressives. This is what you have to consider to be progressives within the U.S. Congress. But how progressive is it when all you're doing is funding wars? So that's where we are, brother. But definitely just wanted to bring some more attention to this issue because I think it's being totally ignored.